Welcome to the Business Mechanic Show. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the cure for your employees who are quietly quitting. Can't believe I haven't introduced this one, as it's taken me a while to get around to this for whatever reason, but this whole catchword today around quiet quitting has gotten pretty viral out there. The trend towards quiet quitting, the idea is spreading virally on social media. Millions of likes and shares and videos are out there about it. And it's about all these people who are not going above and beyond at work and just meeting the bare minimum of their job description. Now, this could get worse, by the way. This is a problem because most jobs today require some level of extra effort to collaborate with coworkers and meet the customer's needs. And in today's podcast, here's what we're going to discuss. What is quiet quitting? What is causing your employees to become quiet quitters? Is it just how the candidate pool today is? Or is there something in your organization that may be creating it? We're going to discuss engagement. What is the definition of engagement? And what, why, and how to improve it, thus improving your quiet quitters. And of course, we're going to talk about what the cure for having quiet quitters is on your team. So let's get started. Here's how I read it. Quiet quitters are simply employees who are not engaged. We've just switched the words engaged employees with quiet quitters or disengaged employees. And many quiet quitters fit Gallup's definition of not engaged at work. So I'm gonna follow that because that's essentially what it is. We've just changed the terminology for it from quiet quitters or to quiet quitters to not engaged at work, or the people who do the minimum job required or are psychologically detached from the job. They just don't care that much. And according to Gallup, which is the premier source of all of it, this describes half of the US workforce, half. Quiet quitting or disengaged employees falls into half of the workforce today. That's pretty scary. Now, what about the other half? Well, everyone else is either engaged, which is about 32% according to Gallup, or actively disengaged. Now, that disengaged or the latter are really loud quitters. Those are your problem employees. They tend to have the most workplace needs being unmet in their mind. And then they spread their dissatisfaction. They become very vocal. There are a lot of the people who are posting things on TikTok about how crappy their job is. And that's generated millions of views and comments. And surveys indicate that management teams spend about 70% of their time having to deal directly with these actively disengaged employees or the problems they create from being actively disengaged. So think about that. 18% of the employee base, disengaged employees, are creating 70% of management's attention. It's a pretty big number. Let's think about that a little bit. Is that really true? See, these actively disengaged, this 18%, maybe higher on your team, maybe lower on your team, that's an average. They infect other employees with their negativity. They're a virus to your team. And they're undermining and criticizing. They're often the cause of missed goals, or they create infighting. They stir things up. They're demoralizing to those who are around them. They sometimes behave passive-aggressively or maybe aggressively. Either way, they're disrespectful. They create fires that you have to deal with, and you're spending way too much time on these individuals. Now, heads up. Most employees who are not engaged or actively disengaged are already looking for another job. Again, according to Gallup. But they're still on your team. They're still on your payroll doing a less than stellar job. And many estimates say that about 70% of your workforce are these disengaged or quiet quitters. Yikes. Pretty big number. Now, somebody's already gone there in their mind, so let's just go ahead and go there with you. And this group of, or this generation of younger employees, well, it's this whole quiet quitting and disengagement is even worse for them. However, let me go back. Quiet quitters cross all age groups, all demographics. It's not just younger people, but it has impacted younger employees more than any other group. And Gallup surveys finds that there's a big decline in engagement and employer satisfaction among the Gen Z and younger millennials, those younger than 35. And this is a significant change from pre-pandemic years. Since the pandemic, younger workers have declined significantly in feeling cared about and having opportunities to develop. Let me say that again. They don't feel cared about and feel like they do not have opportunities to be developed. Nobody's training and developing them. Think about that for a minute. They don't feel cared about. They're not being developed. Where does that come from? More on that later. The percentage of engaged employees under the age of 35 dropped by 6 percentage points. The percentage of engaged dropped by 6 percentage points from 2019 to 2022. And during that same time, the percentage of actively disengaged increased by 6 points. Huge jump. And so all told, younger workers have dropped 10 or more points in the percentage who strongly agree that someone cares about them at work. And someone is encouraging their development. Someone's developing me, training me. And they're reporting they do not have opportunities to learn and grow. That seems so simple and easy, doesn't it? If we could just show that we care about them and give them opportunities to learn and grow, that doesn't sound too hard. Now, let's talk more about where that comes from in a minute. Now, what also happened during the pandemic is there became a lot of hybrid or fully remote employees. Well, guess what? Engagement levels with them got worse too. Fully remote and hybrid young workers dropped 12 points in strong agreement that someone encourages their development. They feel they dropped 12 points that someone, maybe their boss, cares about their development. And very disturbingly, less than 4 in 10 remote or hybrid employees aged 35 and under clearly know what is expected of them at work. So they're out there, they're alone, they're not having regular contact, or their boss, their supervisor is not showing that they have any regard or care for them, or at least they don't feel that way. There's not development opportunities being presented for them. And worse yet is they don't feel like they know what's expected of them. Wow. Okay. This sounds fairly curable. Let's go on through the diagnosis. Now let's talk about this word engagement for a minute. What is engagement? It's a word that's thrown about a lot. And what is it really? Let's take a deeper dive into that. In my opinion, and I've worked in in the engaged world in a very long time. I worked for over a decade for a highly engaged organization who utilized Gallup for measuring that. And I can tell you the benefit of an engaged workforce was clear in the culture and environment of that organization called CarMax. So simply, engaged employees, they feel connected to their organization. They feel connected to their manager. And they work harder and they stay longer and they motivate others to do the same. And I saw that at work for years and years and years with a highly engaged workforce. Doesn't mean everybody was engaged. We had our problems too. But the predominance of our employee base of, gosh, it was about 20,000 employees. I was responsible for about 3,000 of those. Well, it affects positively to just about every important aspect of the organization, including profitability, revenue, customer experience, turnover, and many, many more things. Engaged is very positive. Disengaged, it becomes more of a challenge. And you know on your team or teams who is or isn't engaged. And don't you wish or discuss with someone else how great it would be if more of your employees would just like them. They're the model citizens on your team. Now, there is a lot of information available on how to improve employee engagement. Frankly, some of it's credible, some of it's not. But deeper into engagement, to truly drive employee engagement in your organization, you first need to define and understand what it looks like. So let's give you a better visual of this. Employee engagement is the strength of the mental and emotional connection employees feel toward the work they do. It's that emotional connection to their manager, to their teammates, and their organization. They feel connected to the mission, the vision, the purpose of the organization. And that really comes from who they are working for, their direct supervisor, manager, lead, whatever you call them. And there's different levels of employee engagement. And it measures how these 4 levels to measure how employees feel about their organization and their manager. And based on their perceptions of the workplace, employees are categorized into 4 main groups. First, the ones we love, which are highly engaged employees. We hold them very favorable, their opinions at work. When employees feel connected to their teams, they love their jobs, they have positive feelings about the organization, about their manager, and they're going to stay put, and they're going to put in that extra effort to help your organization succeed. So let me pause and ask a question. Are engaged employees naturally engaged? Meaning I could pick them up and drop them into another company and they'd be equally as engaged the same way they are for you right now? Or is their engagement level right now created by your organization or their supervisor? And that right there is the key point of today's podcast. More on that later. The next category, the second category, are moderately engaged employees. They see the organization in a moderately favorable light. They like their company, but see opportunities for improvement. These employees are less likely to ask for more responsibility. They may at times underperform. There is something about the organization or their job that holds them back from full engagement. In other words, these employees are on the cusp. They could go either way. They could go to highly engaged or they could go to disengaged, which is where your quiet quitters reside. But how is that controlled? What would sway them one way or the other? Who controls that and what controls that? We'll talk about it. Barely engaged employees. Barely engaged employees feel indifferent toward their company and boss. They don't care. They're ambivalent. And they usually lack motivation for their position, what they do. And they do only as much as they can to not get fired, to just get by. And by the way, these barely engaged employees are researching for other jobs. They're constantly looking for a new job. And they're a very high turnover risk. And for sure, these are your quiet quitters. Disengaged employees. They have a very negative opinion of the place that they work. They're completely disconnected or oblivious to the mission and vision and purpose of the company. They don't buy into the goals, may not even pay attention to the goals. And they could care less about the future of the organization. They certainly lack the commitment to their position and responsibility. And it's important to understand how to handle these disengaged employees, because it is very difficult that once they get to this fourth level, they ever bring them back. And they're creating negative perceptions throughout your organization. They impact the productivity of all those around them. And this group is not quietly quitting. They're loudly quitting. See, they're your disruptors. They're your problem child. They're your problem employees. And they're the employees that you have to spend a lot of additional time with due to their lack of productivity, their lack of accuracy, poor follow through, or the fires or the problems, the challenges they create, either for you or their fellow employees. And these folks have to go. If they quit, you're way better off. The longer they remain, the longer you deal with their problems. Here it comes. It's a plug for my performance management training. It's a quick call out. I've got a beautiful course at rdltraining.com. It's called Performance Management That Works. It's an online training course. The links to it are in the show notes. Check it out, because that is the cure for getting these very loud quitters, these highly disengaged problem employees out of your system as quickly as possible. It also provides you the ability that before these employees are on the cusp, they fall to the negative side, to prevent that. Performance management works at rdltraining.com. Check it out. It is the cure. It is the cure. And I'm going to explain why it is shortly. Now, I think it's also important during this discussion to talk about employee happiness. Some leaders, some organizations may wonder how to keep employees happy. While that's important, happiness is not the same as engagement. Two separate things. Happy employee says nothing about how invested your employees are in the company, in the team, what you're doing. It says nothing. It drives nothing to how hard they work on behalf of the organization. See, happiness is short term. It's a rapidly changing measurement. For example, and it's an example I really want to make. An employee may feel temporarily happy from getting a raise. However, short term, they're likely to sink back into some level of disengagement if the manager, if the company is not doing something to actively engage them. And that comes with proper leadership actions. And the point of all this, right, I call out the raise part, is there is no silver bullet to fixing employee engagement. It's not a silver bullet. It's work. There's a system available to you to help you turn this around, and it works 100% of the time. But you cannot buy engagement. Paying your people more does not change their minds about being a quiet quitter. They may be happy for a month. They may sprint and do a good job for about 30 days, but they lose that momentum. So lose the thought that if I just pay people more, I can buy engagement. It doesn't work. It's never worked. It's never going to work. You cannot throw money at the problem. Paying people more does not save them from being quiet quitters or disengaged employees. Does it? So let's talk more about engagement. Because engagement, I can't remember, it's not short term, it's long term. And that's the deep long-term engagement, long-term connection to your organization. It focuses on the employee's connection with their boss, with their company, on their own well-being. And the business case for employee engagement is huge. See, when employees are engaged, and I know the difference. I've worked for highly engaged organizations in my career, and I worked for highly disengaged companies in my career, frankly, and they were horrible to work for. But let me tell you, the disengaged company had no idea, and they were putting zero effort into changing anything. They did not either understand or care about the value of driving employee engagement. When I switched careers and went to work for a company that was very committed to an engaged workforce, it was the difference of night and day. Changed my leadership perspective dramatically. Because when employees are engaged, their discretionary effort goes way up. They want to go above and beyond the basic requirements of the job. And when leaders and managers channel that energy in the right direction, employee engagement impacts a host of business outcomes. But what engages employees versus disengages them? So an engaged workforce, well, you get increased productivity, as I've mentioned before. In fact, engaged employees are 17%, again, according to Gallup, 17% more productive than their peers. They're more likely to work diligently and expend this discretionary effort in their jobs. And it is my case to state to you today that you can create these engaged employees. You can. Not all of them, but many more than you currently have today. It also, when they are engaged, they stick around, like I mentioned earlier. You have less turnover, and turnover is expensive. It's a pain in the butt for searching, training, interviewing, taking a crapshoot on who you're hiring. Because engaged employees, they're not looking for someplace else to work. They're far less likely to turn over because they know they're being recognized for their contributions. Who controls that? They see opportunities for professional growth and career development. Who controls that? They understand the organizational changes, the ones that happen, and they know why they need to happen, and they buy in and support that. These three pillars enable employees to connect to their manager and feel appreciated and informed. Who controls that? Another key outcomes of this is, and this is through another survey, 72% of executives strongly agree that organizations with highly engaged employees have highly happy customers. Engaged employees care deeply about their jobs, thus their customers. They're connected with the mission and the goal of the company is we're here to provide a service, a product, and keep our customers happy and buying from us. And as Richard Branson once said, his quote goes, take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers, and everything else will take care of itself. Take care of your employees, they're going to take care of your customers, and everything else will take care of itself. And I know that to be the case. Do you have trouble with your employees being frequently late or absent? A lot of companies do. In fact, I've never seen it as bad as it is right now. But when employees are engaged and they're committed to the mission of the company, they're going to show up. In fact, statistics show that highly engaged workplaces see 41% lower absenteeism. Think about that, 41% less call-outs. Wow. That's the case. And if you have employees who miss a lot of work, there's your quiet quitters. Those are your disengaged employees. And if you're a company that safety is a big issue, most companies have some need to control worker safety. Well, engaged employee workplaces, well, they're more aware of their surroundings. They focus on the task at hand, and they have 70% fewer workplace safety incidents. Wow. That's big. Think about what that does to your workers' comp. So let's talk about solving the quiet quitting crisis. What's the cure? We're finally here. I've led you up to this. It's clear that quiet quitting is a symptom, to me anyway, it's a symptom of unknowing and untrained management. But before we even go any deeper into that, let's talk about engagement at the management level. Because this is scary too, employers. Only 1 in 3 managers report that they're engaged at work. So if you have disengaged managers, what are the employees going to be? It's pretty critical. But I can tell you, and I've said it in previous podcasts, many senior leaders are terrible at giving their managers feedback, regular feedback. Senior leadership needs to reskill themselves to win the managers over, to win in a new hybrid environment. Managers must learn how to have conversations to help employees reduce disengagement and burnout. You got to train them. Only managers are in a position to know your employees as individuals, their life, their situations, that employee's strengths, their goals. Let me tell you a quick story. This is a true story. I was hired by a company to come in and train their new management team. And as many of you followed me in the past know that most management training consists of trial and error. And fortunately, the president of this organization recognized that trial and error was not working for them. He had a brand new group of managers, and things were not going well for them. He found me, brought me in to work on the results-driven leadership management training. And I think it was maybe in the second or third session I'd had with the management team. And the exercise during this was, we're going to talk about your challenging employees, your employee problems. Bring one challenge, bring your story. Let's talk about, and my purpose of that discussion was, let's go upstream and find out where it came from. I didn't tell them that. I just wanted to bring the challenge to me, and then we're going to unpack that challenge and figure out how the individual who brought that challenge, the manager who brought that challenge, may have had some ownership, creation of that challenge. So one manager, comes her time, she starts talking about her problem employee, and I don't remember his name, frankly, but I think it was Kevin. I guarantee you Kevin's not listening to this. And she starts telling me about Kevin. So she had to give Kevin a write-up. And the write-up was because Kevin had made some big mistake. And when she delivered this write-up, it did not go well. Kevin reacted very negatively. A lot of pushback, didn't own it, did not accept any blame for this mistake, argued with this manager. It got a little heated, and she wanted to know how to fix that. And as I started unpacking it with this manager, I got blown away by a certain piece of information that came out. And that information is, well, how many times before had you talked to Kevin about his performance? And the response was, well, I've never talked to Kevin before. And I thought maybe at first she had not talked about performance. But as I asked questions, I found that no, she had never once talked to Kevin. That was her, I think they call them leads. That was her leads job, to talk to employees. It wasn't her job to talk to employees. Okay, that might be a problem. That might be a problem. And as I worked through that, I slowly started seeing the light come on for this manager as to the gigantic mistake she was making by delegating the connection to her team, her mission, her goals. She did not communicate goals very well to the team, did not hold people very accountable. And so the team was struggling. All tied back. If the manager does not have some kind of connection and regular conversation with their direct reports, with their employees, you're going to have a highly disengaged workforce. And by the way, this company had a huge turnover problem. Very expensive for them. So it happens. If you don't believe that happens, well, you may be mistaken. Now, Gallup finds the best requirement and habit for managers to develop is so simple. It's so simple, and it's zero cost. Zero cost, but it does require some training. Is having one meaningful conversation per week with each team member. That drives engagement tremendously. So all they have to do, free of cost, is have one meaningful conversation with each team member. And it can last between 15 and 30 minutes. They generally last about 15 minutes in the organizations that do this well, because they're doing it regularly. You see, managers need to create accountability. And so before you go too far where your perception is going about what I just mentioned, it's not just going and patting them on the back and not talking about any of the bad stuff, any areas for their development. Remember, they're disengaged because they're not being developed. These employees show up for work, and they would love for somebody to tell them what they can work on to get better at work. People want to achieve and be successful, but their lack of accountability, commitment to doing a good job, comes from not getting any feedback. They don't know where they stand. They don't know what's expected of them, as I previously mentioned. See, these managers, your managers, if you're a manager, you need to create accountability for individual performance. You need to create team collaboration. They need to understand what they do and how it impacts the customer and the value they bring to your customer. They've got to understand clearly how their work contributes to the organization's larger purpose. That is called alignment. Now, back to accountability for a minute. Managers who are a driving need to be liked will likely have quiet quitters, because being liked is not a great management skill set. Being respected is, but being liked is not a driving force. And you see many unknowing, untrained managers tailor their approaches to their employee base around being popular or being liked. And they think if people like me, they'll do a better job. Like is okay, respected is better, but the connection is the most important. You have to have a connection. You must professionally hold all team members to expectations for the job. Now, there's a very common, and it happens a lot with younger folks on your team. And that's the word fairness comes around, or perceived favoritism or unfairness. And that demotivates potentially great employees into the quiet quitters very quickly. It also lowers the perceived standards of what's expected of them. And if you have established goals, you need to communicate those and have regular conversations how the individual is doing to achieving those goals. If you have rules, you have to apply them equally. Standards have to be applied equally. You've got to hold everybody equally to the expectations of the job. But most importantly, it's not just about command and control. It's about providing the support that they need to obtain those goals, to give them feedback, to give them training, to coach them. That's a different story. And that's where that 15 to 30-minute conversation on a regular basis, I encourage weekly. I also am a huge advocate for a 30-minute to hour-long monthly review with each employee in written form to their expectations, to their individual goals every month. And there's people listening to this and, oh my God, I don't have time for that. Well, that may sound like a lot to ask. However, here is the actual result of having those conversations once a month in writing using the proper method. Because the time you save by eliminating these quiet quitters or these disengaged employees, these actively disengaged associates that you have, will allow you this time easily. This requires managers to have a program. They've got to be trained for performance discussions and managing and leading. And there's training readily available for this, including on our website, rdltraining.com, Romeo Delta Lima training.com. There's a link to the course below. And think about this. This investment in regular feedback is fire prevention and prevents firefighting. You remember I talked about the 70% of management time that's spent on dealing with problems created by problem employees? That dissipates. It doesn't completely go away. I don't want to oversell this, but it goes way down. And here's the suck of it all. Unknowing, untrained managers create the quiet quitters. They create the quiet quitters. So let's also talk about where else these quiet quitters may come from. Poor hiring skills, poor interviewing skills, Because have we created this quiet quitter or have we hired a quiet quitter? You may have hired someone who is not a good fit for the job, and right off the bat, that's going to be a challenge for you. They may not be a good fit for the job specifically. They may not be a fit for your leadership style. And these poor fits eventually, if not quickly, become quiet quitters. And you have to know how to hire good fits for your company, for that position, your leadership style. You have to have a robust and effective hiring system. Frankly, most companies don't. Why? Never thought about it. They've never been given one. Or even deeper in the cause of quiet quitters, we don't have interview skills. Your managers making hiring decisions have never been taught the proper approach for interviewing. Trial and error again. There are very specific protocols that work highly effectively for hiring great employees who are properly suited to your company, your leadership, the position you have. So 2 things to avoid disengagement and quiet quitters. You have to have an interview and selection process. And oh, by the way, at RDL training, we have that for you. It's called How to Hire Great People. There's a link below to go check it out. It is an online training course. I also offer it virtually. And if you do one thing in advance for your management and leadership effectiveness, learn the proper way to interview, select, hire, and onboard employees. And part of every good hiring system is a pre-employment assessment. And if you don't have a benchmark or understanding of the key traits that your successful, highly engaged employees possess, then every time you hire someone new, it's a crapshoot. Now, predominant companies don't utilize this tool. They interview, they bring people on, they take the crapshoot. But let me tell you, it is a complete game changer for you. Think about this. If I could have a tool that says, I just need to copy this behavioral style for my future employees, I know what good employees look like in their behavioral traits, the way they behave and act at work, and I've got the tool for that. If I know what the benchmark is, and then I'm hiring and interviewing people that fit that, your likelihood of success with these new hires soars. Or it prevents you from making costly mistakes and hiring somebody that's not going to fit the behavioral pattern of your highly engaged employees. So if you're interested in learning more about the tool of employee assessments, please contact me. You go to rdltraining.com, use the contact button. My email is in the show notes. I've got a couple to offer you. The one that I think is the most affordable and highly effective, it's simple, is the TalAssure program. It's affordable and it's effective. Please contact me. I can give you a full demo on it. And let me tell you, it's use this, invest in a pre-employment assessment for your new hires. It more than covers the cost of hiring mistakes. Hiring people who are likely to be disengaged or quiet quitters, and the cost of turnover more than covers the cost. So what else do I need to do to cure my quiet quitters? Managers must keep very important elements in their leadership approach. Here are just a few. Let me share a few questions from the Gallup Employment Engagement Survey. My opinion seems to count at work. And let me tell you, in all the years that I was responsible for engagement surveys. This one was hard, but it's very easily fixed, truly. It's a training, it's an understanding in leadership that when you're having conversations with employees, that you're not creating monologues, that you create dialogue. Now, last week's podcast was on this very thing, how to have difficult conversations, the ability to create dialogue, avoid your perceptions, avoid going in with a predetermined outcome, and being open and asking questions and getting another side. Let's create this pool of knowledge, because that's where this, my opinion seems to count at work, comes from. Or one of the deepest elements of human need is to be listened to. And unfortunately, a very large portion of our management teams out there do not know that, understand that, haven't been trained on how to listen to people, to ask the right questions. Most importantly, the importance, the effectiveness of changing that one thing about their leadership style. Ask questions first and create a dialogue. Second thing that is essential, this is out of a long list from Gallup, that they need to be positively engaged, is they need to be able to answer this question positively. If I contribute to the organization's success, I know I'll be recognized. Remember that little 15-minute conversation we need to have with every employee every week? All they want to do is know, all they want to know is, does someone know that I'm working hard and getting things done around here? You know, I talk about this in other podcasts. You need to make deposits into the emotional bank account, positive deposits into the emotional bank account. You simply got to catch them doing it right. But most managers spend their time and their observations on catching people doing it wrong. They want to fix what's broken rather than try to encourage what is right. That creates quiet quitters, or it creates highly engaged people if they're getting regular feedback. Catch them doing it right. And if they hear more about what they're doing right than what they're doing wrong, you're likely to have engaged employees. Next question. I see professional growth and career development opportunities for myself here. That's where monthly reviews come in, performance management, having personal development plans, helping them learn and grow, regular training sessions. I'm a huge proponent for having monthly training sessions on something, anything. Teach them something. You will have engaged employees. And the last one I'm going to mention, I'm also going to give you access to the whole list. I have the information I need to do my job well, which is processes, reviews, regular training sessions in the right format. Do you have written, documented processes that which you train people off of, that you hold people accountable to? A lot of companies don't. Or if they do, they don't refer to them very often, or they're not easily accessible by the associates in your organization. And if you would like a full list and instructions on how to have proper meetings around engagement, reach out to me. Again, my email is in the show notes. Email me, ask for the Q12 questions, the 12 key engagement points. I'll send you a free version out of my course, How to Create a High-Performance Culture. You'll have instructions on it, what questions to ask, and how, more importantly, to improve it. And then to how to check yourself and see if you're actually improving. All right, I'm pretty deep into this. Your head may be spinning at this point. There's so many factors to being an effective leader. I've covered just a thimbleful of them today. But back to curing quiet quitters. I believe I've covered the cure for you today on the key elements of how to have a more engaged workforce, be proactive to preventing quiet quitters in your organization. You and your employee base, your management team, they got to be self-accountable to their actions. These people are created, not born. You've got to be accountable for the future of changing this. If you're interested in having higher productivity, higher profits, better customer service scores, making your job easier, spending way less time on challenges. If you have an HR department, they're going to love this program. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Get your managers training. They must have it to avoid all these byproducts of disengagement, quiet quitting, et cetera, et cetera. Contact us at rdltraining.com. Let's discuss your situation. Let's tailor a program or programs that will solve your quiet quitting, your engagement issues, your management engagement to improve the number and the depth of the challenges your management team has. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for listening today. We'll talk to you again next week. Please visit our website. And as always, thanks.